We've got a couple of important last-minute changes to the groups of World's Strongest Man this year. Liz is quickly going to go through those changes. Group 1 and Group 5. The rest of the groups are still the same, but if you quickly go through the new groups and just... Obviously, for those that have been watching, unfortunately, Graham Hicks went to World's Strongest Man with an injury. He had a groin injury. Warming up for the squat, or testing the squat in the yard, he realised he's in no shape to compete. So sadly, Graham Hicks withdraws from World's Strongest Man. Irvin Toots is the replacement, but Irvin is not replacing Hicksy in Group 1. So do you want to go through who is now in Group 1?
Okay, so in Group 1 now we have Maxime Boudreau, Travis Ortmeyer, Brian Shaw, Ivers Schmucksterles, and Gav Bilton, who's been moved over from Group 5.
Now that's an interesting switch because Gav originally had the deadlift, I believe.
He did.
And this group is a squat group.
Yes.
So that's going to be an interesting last minute change for him.
Is it a good change for him?
I think Gav's a decent squatter. I think maybe he's a better deadlifter, but it's not a huge change in terms of events. The events are very similar in that group. It's just the deadlift and squat.
I think how tough the group is very similar as well, isn't it?
It is.
It's like out of the frying pan into another frying pan. Gav is the sausage.
Well, let's be honest. There's no easy groups at World Strongest Man. Every single group is stacked, and I think Gav is going to perform well this year. Whether he can make the final, I don't know. But I think he's got events he can certainly push people on, and I think he's going to do better than he did last year. I still don't think that change will affect who I think will get through that group, though.
Okay.
So the other change is in Group 5, and obviously with Gav moving from Group 5 to Group 1, Irvin Toots is now placed into Group 5. Quickly go through it, Liz.
Okay, so in Group 5, we now have Irvin Toots, Kevin Ferris, Alexei Novikov, Luke Stoltman, and Bobby Thompson.
And again, you just reel off these names and you're like, damn, that's another really tough group.
Yeah.
But every group is the same. There really isn't an easy group at World's Strongest Man anymore. We have 25 athletes that are all very deserving, very, very impressive. And I think it's going to make for some exciting groups and finishes this year. I've got my favourites and people that I think will go through, but I think there's going to be some real battles.
There's going to be some surprises as well.
There's always surprises anyway, but this year... Yeah, and you wouldn't even... a lot of them you wouldn't even say are going to be surprises. I think there's just going to be some tremendous battles between some of the athletes. It's going to be exciting for us watching and waiting for the results. I'm sure for you guys too. For the athletes, it's going to be brutal. They've got a few days now of just brutal, rough competition. And I think one of the things that I find very interesting with how Worlds have laid the events out this year is that the squat and deadlift are on day one. That is a big factor, and it doesn't happen very often at Worlds.
No, and I think, I don't know, it's kind of unfair because it's always happened at Worlds, hasn't it? These gentlemen agreements, like when you don't want to have to kill yourself, it's like they do it, don't they?
If you're in a position where you can coast to the final, you will, because you always want to save energy for the final. Yeah. But this year, there's not going to be any of that, particularly when it comes on the squat.
No, so by doing it on day one, no one's going to be in a position to say, oh, I don't need to win. Like, everyone's going to still trying to be winning the event. So, and
just from experience, when you have to go balls to the wall, when you've got to go deep and push hard on an event like a squat or deadlift, it really, really taxes the body. Much more than, say, a moving event. Yeah. Like, you could have a heavy farmers or a loading event or a yoke or whatever, but it's done in a reasonable, you can kind of just, for me, the yoke, I could get it done quickly. Doesn't matter how heavy it was. Yeah. It was an easier event. The squat, where you're pushing to the limit, is just brutal. And that will be hard for them to recover from. Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting to see if anyone uses tactics, if other people are just going to push and kind of give everything, because they have to figure out how to plan their energy expenditure for the whole contest. And sometimes, and I've made this mistake before, I tried to hold back a little bit in the heats, didn't make the final. No. So you've got to play
it right, haven't you? It's really difficult.
It is.
And it does make me laugh as well, because a lot of people say, oh, they want to see more of the static events, more of the true tests of strength at World's Strongest Man. But how much more would the athletes fall apart if that was all they were doing for across 10 events?
You need that kind of
You need the variety, yeah. So last night we did a live and we missed a couple of super chats because Lars talks for far too long. So apologies for that. But one of them from Pete
Because
Rogers.
Liz's eyes are getting old and she doesn't see things.
One of them from Pete Rogers. What do you think about Rob Kearney pulling out of being an alternate? And do you think that's going to be held against him in future years' selections? So for those that don't know, Rob Kearney was supposed to be one of the reserves this year. He chose not to go because it clashed with another opportunity that he had with one of his sponsors. So he's gone with that instead, which is fair enough, isn't it? You know, you don't turn down work, do you?
No, definitely. Apparently it's quite a big opportunity that he's had.
Yeah.
Being a reserve at Worlds, there's a good chance you're not going to get in.
Yeah.
As an athlete, you really want to go to Worlds knowing you've got your position.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine being the alternate, but you don't really train with the same focus.
Yeah.
You don't. You go in there thinking you're probably not going to get in, and you just don't have that same mindset. I don't think it's going to affect his future ability to compete at World's Strongest Man. I mean, Rob's an incredible athlete anyway, and more than capable of going to qualify in a number of the Giants live shows or the other opportunities there are to get to Worlds. I don't think it's going to affect him. He's got a great following. He's improving. He's been unlucky with a couple of injuries recently, but I think by next year we're going to see him back to his best. And
I hope so.
people, love seeing Rob, so I don't think it's going to affect his future opportunities at all.
So the rumour mill has been running strong because of a post by Eddie saying World's Strongest Man have been begging him to compete after a few dropouts. And people have been wondering who else has dropped out. Now, we heard some rumours, but looking at everything, there's nothing to suggest that anyone else has dropped out at this point. Gabrielle Pena did a post on his Instagram saying there was an opportunity to compete, but the organisers at World's Strongest Man are still a bit concerned about the issues that he suffered last year, which is obviously a massive disappointment for him. But I'm wondering now then, was his opportunity just to replace Graham and not to replace anyone else?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it looks like at
Yeah.
the moment. I mean, World's Strongest Man have announced the changes in the groups. I'm sure if there are changes, they'll announce them, ASAP. But as it stands, the only change that officially has been announced is Hicks is out, Irvin Toots is in, and the two switches that we've shown you in the groups earlier. So guys, we'll be back later today with the results from day one. Day one events are the loading event,
yes,
and the squat or the deadlift. An exciting first day. It'll really lay the foundations of how each group is looking, and I for one am certainly really excited to see how it goes. While you're here guys, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my awesome strength content.